Today we're going to be looking at a Taylor guitar from the past, literally a legendary limited edition model from 23 years ago. So stick around, we're going to tell you all about it. Hey, you're watching Alamo Music TV. My name is Chris McKee.
And I'm Cooper Greenberg.
We're here with the Alamo Music Center in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you're new to the channel, you know what to do. Subscribe, turn on notifications to like our videos. If you want to support us, visit our spring store link below for custom swag. Check out our podcast and buy our stuff. Literally a legendary guitar that we are looking at today. This is a 23-year-old Taylor 814, no E, no C, limited edition from the Legends of the Fall collection, which I will tell you a little bit more about if you don't know. But a very unique guitar. Brazilian rosewood kind of sets it apart, and some stylized stuff that we'll show you as the video goes on.
So first off, this came in on a consignment last week, and I immediately texted Chris a photo of the back, which, you know, I'll show you in just a second. It's like, name that guitar. Boom.
Knowing full well that I would tell you exactly what it was.
And like the customer, he said this is a 814B Legends of the Fall, but I texted Chris just as like a fun, look how fast this will happen. He's like, Legends of the Fall.
Yeah.
Now, for me, somebody that was 3 when the Legends of the Fall collection dropped.
Is that for real?
Yeah, I was 3.
Oh my gosh. Thanks, Cooper.
So all I knew is that there's also a film, Legends of the Fall.
Yes.
And I was like, well, they did Last of Us, so maybe they did like something.
Brad Pitt inspired.
Maybe not a Brad Pitt.
There's a bear version.
Yeah. So turns
There's
out
a caught and barbed wire version.
That's
Sorry
not
for giving
the
away
case.
key
Yeah.
points of the movie.
Spoiler
alert.
You're late. But of course, then I hopped onto the Taylor group.
Mm-hmm.
I hopped onto Reddit. I went to old forums, and then I saw all these very cool guitars.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit, because you said you probably still got the wood and steel that it
Yeah, I have a
dropped
lot
in. Yeah.
of old issues of wood and steel. Thankfully, and we've debated whether or not this was our current rep, JR, but at one point I emailed Taylor. They will not do this nowadays, okay? But in the Wild West early days of the early aughts, I emailed Taylor, and I had been getting the wood and steels that were in the store and all this stuff. And I said, hey, do y'all have any back issues? And they shipped me a giant box of back issues of wood and steels and old catalogs. So I've talked about the red catalog. Before that, in the 90s, they had a catalog with John Cephas on the front of it, which is very, very cool. It's like on a couch and stuff. So I've got all of this stuff.
And now, 20 years later, you have back issues. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Knee issues too. Do you need a paramedic? No, I need a pair of knees. So I have the back issues of all of this stuff, and I've actually thought about digitizing it just because it's going to get lost to the past. And there's stuff in there that Bob Taylor's forgotten. I remember years ago on one of the groups that I was active on, someone asked, has Taylor ever done a slotted headstock? And this was before they were doing slotted headstock guitars. Yeah. And Bob Taylor was on the group. They called him Uncle Bob until lawyers were like, this is a bad idea. And he says, no, we've never done a slotted headstock. And I've got the receipts, and I pulled this wood and steel with a photo. They did a Dreadnought and a Grand Auditorium, one-offs for some, like charity auction that both had slotted headstocks. It's like, oh, forgot all about this. So there's all sorts of information in there. But going back to these guitars.
Yeah.
So in 2000, they did these called Legends of the Fall, and they're easily recognizable if you'll turn it around. With this, it's the stylized T inlay. There were 2 versions of this. There was this version, which is the full T, if it was a non-cutaway, and if you had a cutaway version, then instead of moving it down, they just cut off half of the T and kind of stylized it a little differently. But there were a lot of very cool limited editions in the early 2000s that Taylor did. And the Legends of the Fall stuff was, I think, kind of the start of cool spring and fall limited editions, at least in my recollection. I remember them kind of becoming more of the norm after these introduced. And these were extremely popular. They had, there were 300 series that had Koa.
Yeah.
Those are really popular.
I saw a lot of photos of those. They looked super cool.
Yeah, because you got Koa at a 300 series price, roughly. So those were a really big deal. These were the really big deal because it's Brazilian rosewood. This particular one has a 3-piece back with some really nice sapwood on it. But yeah, that was the deal. And I'm sure it was a play on words for the movie, because it was easily recognizable. But yeah, they came out with these and did it for a few years, and then they just started calling them, fall limited.
So, is that Engelmann on there that they did on these?
I'm pretty sure it's Sitka.
Because like I said, since I wasn't around at the time, I did look through, and there was a whole bunch of different kinds of 800 with Brazilian, and I saw a few that were mainly dreadnoughts. They were 810s, but they had Engelmann tops.
I think those were like 2002, 2003. Just the coloration on that, I can tell you, it's Sitka.
Well, it's also old, Chris.
Yeah, but you've seen mine. So Sitka tends to darken more of like a brown tannish color.
Yeah.
And Engelmann tends to get more honey hued.
Yeah.
So
doesn't Adirondack kind of do the same?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the whiter spruces tend to do that.
Yeah.
So, and cedar does that too. Cedar becomes very reddish over time. So
there's also a very cool design feature. One of our inlays that we created, progressive diamonds.
Progressive diamonds.
But that's a nice little something right there because we like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Harken back to the classic 800 series.
But the big deal, obviously, is the Brazilian and. Let me ask.
I'll tell you what else is interesting about this guitar is because it's from 2000. Actually, let's see. This was built.
It's 2000.
No, but it was built in October 13th of 2000.
That's my dad's birthday.
So there you go. Your dad should get this guitar.
Dad, if you're watching this.
It's your birthday guitar. 2000 is when they introduced the NT neck. Okay?
Wow.
And they did that starting with the lower priced guitars in their lineup. And then moving through. And if you're not familiar, Taylor has used bolt-on necks since their inception. And at the, gosh, this sounds terrible. At the turn of the century, they switched to this new proprietary neck joint called the NT neck that all Taylors have had since 2000, where there is basically a pocket for the heel, a pocket for the fretboard, shims. We can take the neck off in a matter of minutes and adjust the angle by adjusting the shims within 0.02 of an inch. And so you can dial it in perfect from the factory, and it's very easy to deal with later on. That was happening through the lineup. So what's interesting about this is my 914C, which was built in 2000, got the bracing under there for the NT, but it's got a classic bolt-on neck. So it was kind of a transitionary piece. That's why my guitar is so cool. But yeah, this was later in the year, and so it got the full NT neck.
That's cool. I have a question for you, but first off, these did come with Grovers to start. This has been changed.
Which means it was well-loved, and someone changed it in order to have the tuners that they liked on it, which I think is great and cool. Notice this too? That's also the sign of the NT neck. So early on, they have scarf joints now, but it was a finger joint. And there was, I have a VHS tape when they did this of Bob Taylor trying to demonstrate how strong of a joint that is by taking, I think it was a classic Taylor neck, I think a Martin neck, and then one of these, and putting it under a drill press with a meter to measure how many pounds of pressure there was to see at what point it would break. And that took like 400 pounds of pressure or something.
Dang. That's cool.
Yeah.
So here's my big loaded question before we get to the demo.
Sure.
Is Brazilian rosewood worth it?
Bob Taylor answered this question in a room full of dealers I was in once.
Uncle Bob?
Uncle Bob. And Uncle Bob said it's earned its reputation. So I think Brazilian rosewood is worth it. I think Brazilian rosewood is misunderstood, though. People think Brazilian rosewood is like the bassiest sounding rosewood. It's not. East Indian rosewood actually has more bass than Brazilian rosewood. What Brazilian rosewood has is more complex overtones and a more bell-like chime on the high end, which is what's really important on an acoustic guitar. You need that chime. You need that high end. And with Rosewood, you want that complexity, in that the fullness of the sound.
Yeah.
That's what Brazilian Rosewood has in spades. It's earned its reputation. It's sought after for a reason, not just because of its rarity, but it was used so much because of its wonderful tone.
Yeah.
And it wasn't guitar makers, we should stress, that caused it to be overforested and put it in the situation that it's in now. It was people using it for like furniture manufacturing and stuff.
Yeah.
So, you can't really get your hands on it very much, and it's protected, and you have travel restrictions and all of that stuff. But if you can get it, it's a great tonewood.
So the thing about this is, it's hard to get a hold of Brazilian Rosewood, but it's also fun with a guitar of this age that the top's been broken in a little bit, and it's definitely a sweet sound. I got to play it for you, so let's take a listen.
So there you have it, a 2000 Taylor 814 Legends of the Fall Brazilian Rosewood guitar. Really fantastic guitar.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, this was one of the first of the V class.
No, you are mistaken. No, this would have been what we call Taylor's Classic Scalloped X Bracing.
Well, if it's not V-Class, I mean, what's the point, dude?
Well, yeah, good point. When they came out with V-Class, one of the things they stressed is that they still love X-Brace guitars, but Taylor's always trying to make, their guitars better and better and better. I think what often gets lost is how good their past guitars are. They can offer a great value if you're looking in the used market. I wouldn't trade my also 23-year-old 914C for anything. I absolutely love that guitar. But I would also readily buy a brand new Taylor. They've grown consistent. They've gotten better. But yeah, those old guitars are great. And, there's a saying that they have that I love, which is serial numbers are not expiration dates. Guitars actually do get better with age. That's one of the benefits of it. Sometimes we've had customers come in the shop and like, well, that's last year's model. It's a brand new guitar.
Yeah.
It's still a brand new guitar. This obviously is not, but it's a fantastic guitar with 23 years of playing in it. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, some people want the brand new in the box, Taylor V-Class bracing, but this is maybe for somebody completely different that wants scalloped X bracing, Brazilian, and a aged but beautiful, spruce top. It gives a different sound, and it's and maybe one day your new 814 builders will have this amazingly broken in and honey-hued Adirondack and whatever. But this is just a different sound than something that you're going to pull off the shelf really anywhere right now. So,
are these considered vintage now? I'm trying to think. It's over 20 years old. Does that mean it's vintage?
It's got to be. I think anything Brazilian, it kind of has that certain. This is old school. I do wonder, and maybe they've made them, but I wonder if we'll ever get a V-Class Brazilian. I don't know how much they have left, or if they would just make it to have fun. But
a few years ago, they did kind of those Milagro Brazilians that we got. I kind of felt like that was the last hurrah. Yeah. But you never know. Like, you never say never, both if you're James Bond and if you're a Taylor guitar fan, because stuff becomes available. And I think that's what it comes down to is a stash of old cut Brazilian will become available, or who knows what the future might hold with CITES and reforestry planning and all of that stuff. So who knows? I think again, it's a tonewood. It's earned its reputation. It's fantastic tonewood, and if you can get it, you should get it. If you can't, there are a lot of woods that I think guitar makers have done a really good job of finding that fill that void. East Indian Rosewood has really been a great option, but it does not sound exactly the same. If you have, kind of the ear for it, you'll pick out the differences.
And it looks wildly different too.
Yeah, well, it depends upon the piece, but yeah, like this has a lot of the hallmarks of what you'd see in a lot of Brazilian Rosewood nowadays.
I think about over on the side here, most of the Brazilian, especially the Taylors that I've seen, have that pretty kind of swirl look, whereas, all the East Indian that they're using right now is very straight, very dark, and it's cool.
Well, part of that is flat sawn versus quarter sawn, based upon the wood that's available. But yeah, some Brazilian Rosewood gets like inky blacks and spiderweb stuff going through it, or sometimes it can look a little bit like Zetacolte.
Is the flat sawn stuff the later used because it was that makes sense.
Yeah, so some people called a lot of that flat sawn like stump wood.
Yeah.
And people thought of that as like in a derogatory way, not realizing that there was so much waste.
Yeah.
The story with ebony is another great example. These trees would be cut off at a height of like sometimes 5 feet or more. And so the stump you're talking about is like this massiveness of a tree still. And so there was a lot of wood that was just kind of abandoned and it was waste. So
yeah, it's cool to see how much variation that you can get from this stuff. Even the wild grain East Indian Rosewood that Martin's using a lot of. But yeah, I think it's cool. I think the last Brazilian we had was that GS Limited. You remember that one?
Yeah.
I just think it's cool to see something like that or something like this, that it's very tastefully appointed. It's not drowning in abalone. It's about the Brazilian and
it doesn't cost $12,000.
Yeah, because then you see some of the builders that are making like their Brazilian Adirondack top, and it's got like a pound of pearl on it, and you want something that's going to be classic. This is definitely a classic looking guitar. Got the Taylor look, but it's tasteful.
These are kind of considered instant classics when they came out, and I think it holds true 23 years later. So this is a used guitar that obviously we have in stock right now, and if they want more information about it with all the specs, they should go to
alamomusic.com.
check out all the photography we've done for the guitar. You can also contact us if you have any questions about the playability, the condition, all that stuff. It's a great playing, great sounding guitar that is special, and there's not that many of them around. I don't know exactly how many they made. They weren't numbered series, but the fact that it's Brazilian rosewood, there wasn't that many. So definitely give us a holler online or in person or over the phone if you are interested in a guitar like this or others.
And if you're in the area, if you have other legends of the fall, it'd be cool. Even if you just want to bring it in on Monday, let us shoot with them. I'd love to see one of those 314s. I saw there was some 514 with maple, I think.
Yep.
So I'd love to see more of those. I think a lot of our viewers would probably just get a kick out of seeing stuff. So if you want to consign it with us or sell it to us, that's great. But also, it'd just be fun to see them in the store.
I missed out on those. I was like in the market and couldn't. And then I ended up buying my 914 the next year, and I'm very, very happy.
But made a good choice.
Yeah, so bring them in. We'd love to educate people about the guitars from the past. They're very cool. If you're new to our channel, this is the stuff we do. We sit here and we geek out about guitars, guitar history, gear, old and new. And if you're into that, make sure you subscribe, you turn on notifications, you like our videos, and you keep coming back, and we will be here for you.